Good afternoon and welcome. Today we're delving into a deeply complex and often contentious issue within international sports. Should athletes from nations currently banned from the Olympics be allowed to compete under a neutral flag? This question forces us to consider the delicate balance between upholding international sporting regulations and sanctions and respecting the aspirations and rights of individual athletes. It's a topic that evokes strong opinions on all sides. To help us navigate this, we have two expert guests. Daniel Evans, a seasoned sports journalist, will argue in favor of allowing neutral participation. And Dr. Lena Petrova, a sports policy expert, will present the arguments against this practice. We'll begin with opening statements from each guest, followed by moderated discussion and rebuttal, and conclude with brief closing remarks. Daniel, please begin.
Thank you, Isabel. My position is grounded in a fundamental principle. We must prioritize the individual athlete. Think about what it takes to reach the Olympic level. It represents years, often decades, of relentless dedication, immense personal sacrifice, and unwavering focus, frequently starting in childhood. These athletes structure their entire lives around the pursuit of this singular dream. To deny them the chance to compete, especially when they personally have done nothing wrong, seems fundamentally unfair. Many bans are imposed due to actions entirely outside an athlete's control, state-sponsored doping programs, or political decisions made by their governments. Punishing demonstrably clean athletes for the sins of their state feels like a violation of basic fairness. Furthermore, allowing neutral participation aligns better with the core ideals of the Olympic Games. The Olympics strive to be a force for peace and unity, celebrating individual human achievement that transcends national borders and politics. Barring clean athletes introduces a political element that contradicts this spirit. The neutral flag, in my view, represents a necessary and reasonable compromise. It acknowledges the official sanction against the nation. No flag, no anthem, no national colors are displayed, while still permitting vetted, clean individuals to participate. We cannot underestimate the devastating human cost of a complete ban on innocent individuals. We're talking about potentially career-ending consequences for athletes who have played by the rules. Their dreams are crushed through no fault of their own. Therefore, providing the neutral pathway is not just practical, it's the ethically responsible approach.
Thank you, Daniel. Dr. Petrova, your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Isabel. While I understand the emotional appeal of focusing on the individual, we must look at the broader context and the purpose of international sports sanctions. Banning a nation from the Olympics is not a decision taken lightly. It's a significant measure reserved for serious breaches of the rules, ethics, or the Olympic Charter itself, typically things like widespread, systemic doping, or severe political interference. The primary purpose of such a ban is to act as a meaningful deterrent and consequence for unacceptable behavior by a national sporting system or government. Allowing athletes from that banned nation to compete, even under a neutral flag, significantly dilutes the impact and the message of the sanction. It essentially lessens the consequences for the offending nation or system. If the system that produced the problem faces reduced repercussions, because its athletes can still participate and potentially win medals, what incentive is there for genuine, systemic reform? Furthermore, the concept of a truly neutral athlete in this context is problematic. Can we realistically separate these individuals entirely from the national system that identified, trained, funded, and coached them, often over many years? There's a valid concern that the neutral athlete provision can function as a loophole, allowing the sanctioned nation to maintain its presence and influence at the Games indirectly. We must also consider the principle of collective representation. National Olympic committees and sports federations are the bodies officially recognized, and they represent their athletes internationally. If the governing body itself is sanctioned due to systemic failures, it logically follows that its representatives should not participate, regardless of the flag they wear. Ultimately, maintaining the integrity of the competition, and ensuring fair play for all nations that abide by the rules must be paramount. Strong, consistently applied sanctions are crucial to deter cheating and protect the foundational principles of the Olympic movement.
Thank you both for those clear opening positions. Let's move into our discussion. Daniel, Dr. Petrova raises a critical point about the practicalities. How can we be truly certain that athletes competing under a neutral flag are genuinely independent from the banned national structures? How do we ensure the ban isn't effectively being bypassed?
That's a fair question, Isabel, and it requires robust mechanisms. The responsibility falls heavily on international bodies like the IOC and WADA, along with relevant international federations. These bodies must implement extremely rigorous vetting processes. This includes extensive reviews of an individual athlete's testing history, ensuring they haven't been implicated in the systemic issues that led to the ban, and confirming they meet strict eligibility criteria demonstrating independence. While no system is perfect, focusing on the individual's record is far more ethical than applying collective punishment, which inevitably harms the innocent alongside the guilty. We must differentiate between the actions of a state or a corrupt national federation and the actions of individual competitors who may actively oppose or be completely removed from those issues. The vetting process is designed to make precisely that distinction.
Dr. Petrova, Daniel argues that collective punishment is unethical. Is a complete ban, which impacts athletes who have dedicated their lives to sport and may bear no personal responsibility, not disproportionately harsh. Isn't there a human cost that outweighs the principle?
The human cost is undeniable, and these are incredibly difficult decisions. However, we must remember the ban is primarily targeting the time system, the national structures that fail to uphold their obligations to fair play and the Olympic Charter. Allowing any participation, even neutral, complicates enforcement and sends a mixed message. It can inadvertently provide a degree of validation or even reward to the very system that is being sanctioned, especially if, quote, neutral athletes achieve success. Upholding fundamental principles sometimes requires making hard choices. The message sent by rigorously enforcing a ban that systemic cheating or violations have severe consequences is crucial for the long-term health and credibility of international sport globally. It's about maintaining a level playing field for the vast majority of athletes and nations who compete fairly. Protecting that principle, unfortunately, sometimes means individuals connected to a sanctioned system face consequences.
Let's shift focus slightly. Dr. Petrova, what about the impact on the games themselves? Banning a nation, especially a major sporting power, often means excluding potentially top athletes, world champions. Doesn't this diminish the overall level of competition and potentially lessen the spectacle for global audiences?
There might be a short-term perceived loss. In terms of specific star athletes being absent, I acknowledge that. However, I would argue that the long-term credibility and integrity of the Olympic Games are far more valuable than the presence of any single athlete or group of athletes. Allowing exceptions, creating loopholes like the neutral flag for nations that have fundamentally broken the rules, ultimately damages the standing and trustworthiness of the Games more significantly. The spectacle is diminished far more profoundly if audiences and participants lose faith in the fairness of the competition. Ensuring that all participants are competing under the same set of rules and that violations have real consequences must be the absolute priority over ensuring every potential medalist is present.
Daniel, conversely, doesn't allowing neutral participation send a confusing message? Dr. Petrova suggests it weakens the sanction. Doesn't it potentially undermine the international community's condemnation of the actions, whether doping or political, that led to the ban in the first place?
I disagree that the message is confusing. The message of condemnation, nudité, is sent clearly through the ban on the nation itself. The absence of the national flag, the anthem, the official team colors, that's a powerful and visible statement of censure. Allowing vetted individuals to compete under a neutral flag demonstrates a commitment to balancing accountability with fundamental human rights. the right of an individual to pursue their profession and passion when they have personally adhered to the rules. It prevents the complete politicization of the games, where athletes become mere pawns in geopolitical disputes or collective punishment scenarios. The focus should remain, as much as possible, on the sporting achievements of individuals. The neutral flag mechanism allows us to uphold sanctions against offending states while avoiding the blanket punishment of potentially innocent athletes. It's nuanced, yes, but necessary in a complex world.
We are nearing the end of our discussion. It's time for closing statements. Daniel, could you please summarize your position?
Certainly. My core argument remains centered on the athletes themselves, their years of sacrifice, their proven adherence to anti-doping rules, and their fundamental right to compete. Collective punishment is unjust. The neutral participation pathway offers a fair and practical compromise. It holds nations accountable by removing their official presence while upholding individual opportunity and the true spirit of the Olympic Games, which celebrates personal excellence. Let us not sacrifice the dreams of clean athletes on the altar of overly broad sanctions. Let individual competition prevail.
Thank you, Daniel. Dr. Petrova, your closing statement?
My position is clear. Meaningful consequences are absolutely essential for upholding the integrity of international sporting rules and deterring future violations. The neutral flag provision, however well-intentioned, creates loopholes, weakens the necessary deterrent effect of bans, and complicates the principle of fair play for all. Protecting the foundational principles of fair competition and the overall credibility of the Olympic Games for the global sporting community must remain our highest priority, even when it involves difficult decisions.
Thank you, Dr. Lena Petrova, and thank you, Daniel Evans, for sharing your insightful perspectives on this very challenging issue today. You've clearly articulated the central conflict, balancing the fairness due to individual athletes against the need to maintain the integrity and rules of international sport. Thank you to our audience for joining us.